Work. Letter C. And this is going to give you now another whole set of questions. What are our organizational assumptions? What are our organizational assumptions? While we were doing this study, I read an article out of Harvard Business Review. I actually had the article in my folder and left it in my office. I'm sorry. And this whole article was about, well, actually, the article is about something else. Within this article, this guy touched on the idea of assumptions. So I came into our discussion. I said, let's talk about some of our assumptions. And here is a statement. It's not a quote from the article, but I adapted something this guy wrote that was helpful. Leaders must bring the underlying assumptions that drive company strategy or church strategy into line with changes in the external environment. I want to read it again and explain it. Leaders, that's us, must bring underlying assumptions that drive company strategy. Every decision you make in your organization is driven by an assumption. You assume things, you make decisions. You assume things, you make decisions. You assume things, you make decisions. But to bring those assumptions into line with external environment, there are assumptions that you make decisions based on that aren't even true. You assume things about people in your church. You assume things about culture. You assume things about your denomination. You assume things and make decisions based on the assumptions. And if the assumptions are false, your decisions aren't going to be right. For years, we assumed that the best way to reach singles in our city was to put them in rows and get an awesome band and a great speaker, and we could reach singles. And for some years, that worked. And then that quit working. So we thought we need a different speaker. We need a better band. We need to put it in a better venue. But our assumption was wrong. And when we finally discovered our assumption was wrong, we discovered the truth about singles in our culture. You know what it is? They don't want to sit in rows and listen to a band and a speaker. They want to serve. When we created serving opportunities for singles, especially around justice issues and social issues, oh my gosh, what happened in our singles ministry. But it took a shift in our assumptions to realize, you know what? We are trying to do what we used to do better, and we're basing this on a false assumption. Once we discovered the truth with a little research and a little bit of paying attention to culture, we discovered something that's far more powerful in terms of how to move and gather and minister to and through singles in our culture. The second quote, it's in your notes, says this: the assumptions, and this is huge if you've been in church a while, the assumptions a team has held the longest are the most deeply, are the likeliest to be its undoing. The assumptions a team has held the longest or the most deeply are the likeliest to be its undoing. Some beliefs have come to appear so obvious that they are off limits for debate. So here's what we did with that. We made a list of all of our assumptions that we could come up with. We came up with over 100. What do we assume about children? What do we assume about singles? What do we assume about families? What do we assume about people's biblical literacy? What are we assuming about people's attitude toward church? Because everything we design, every program we design is around certain assumptions. What are our assumptions about the people we're trying to minister to? And you know what was so amazing? There are certain assumptions that once you surface them and state them, you realize how stupid they are. But until you surface them, you and I will continue to make decisions. This is how old couches stay around for generations. This is why you came out of seminary, some of you, and you said, you know what? I feel like I've been trained to minister to a generation that passed away about 20 years ago. Because our seminaries, and it's the nature of the academic community, it's nobody's fault. The nature of the academic community is to do what they've always done and to teach what they've always taught. That's just the nature of academia. But if there are assumptions that drive those teachings, and if culture has changes and our assumptions haven't shifted, we make decisions based on false information, and consequently, we can't make great decisions. So we listed over 100. And let me give you 4 questions about assumptions to get you going. The first one we asked was this: what do we assume about people and how to reach them? What are we assuming about people and how to reach people? What are we assuming about people and how to reach them? Here's one of our assumptions, that we need to sit people in rows and talk to them. Isn't that what we assume? That the best way to minister to people is to sit them in rows and talk to them. How do I know that? That's the buildings we built. When you were trained for ministry, you were just trying to figure out how many more people can I get in rows so I can talk to them. Because that's an assumption. Is it true or false? I don't know, but it's an assumption. Here's one. Christians love to worship. Christians love to worship. They love to stand up and sing. The more songs you give them, the better. They love that. I don't. I'm a Christian, I think. The older I get, the less I want to sing. 3 songs, I'm good. Let's just get on with the message. Now, there are people who like 10 songs. But if you assume that Christians just love to stand and sing, that's a false assumption. Some do. Some don't. Some will put up with it. Some will come and wait for that to be over with because they just don't. Does that mean we need to get rid of music? No. What does it mean? I don't know. But you know what? Don't create worship services around the assumption that Christians love to stand up and sing. Where did that come from? I don't know. It's an assumption. Number 2, what do we assume programmatically? As you look at all your programs, what are we assuming? What are we assuming? Are we assuming that families all show up together? Programmatically, here's what you're assuming. You're assuming that people show up every week. Now, you know they don't show up every week, but you program as if they're going to. And there are very few families in any of our churches that show up every week as a family. Somebody's always missing. The average person, as Craig says, attends maybe once a month. But isn't it true we program as if they're all going to be here every week? What do you do with that? I don't know. But that needs to be on the top shelf when you're making programming decisions. Number 3, which assumptions are false? Here's some of our false assumptions. If we build it, they will come. We got into the thinking because we were so successful that if we just, create empty seats, people are just going to come. That's a false assumption. Here's one. Inspiration and information results in transformation. Inspiration, combined with information results in transformation. It doesn't. Information and inspiration results in you know more and you feel good. But it doesn't mean you're going to go home and be a better dad. It doesn't mean you're going to go home and be a better mom. It doesn't mean you're going to go home and be a more moral teenager. We've inspired them and we've informed them. And now they're going to be transformed. When I look at much of what we do in ministry, that's our assumption. That's false. If that were true, I would be the most transformed human being on the planet. I grew up with Dr. Charles Stanley, went to church 3 times a week, was in cradle roll. I mean, I know so much. I've been inspired through several generations of Gaither music and worship music and hymns, and have been to Billy Graham crusade. I mean, I should be the most transformed. Transformation is not just the result of inspiration and information. None of us would argue that it is, but look how that drives our programming decisions. How about this one? Moments create movements. That's not true. It's cool to say. Here's one. Here's one of ours just internally. If parents and kids attend kid stuff together, parents are better equipped to lead their kids spiritually. That was our assumption. If parents and kids will attend our Kid Stuff weekly program together, they will be better equipped to lead their families. And then we actually looked at what was actually happening and decided that's a false assumption. And we spent a lot of dollars and trained a lot of people to a very specific program that was not accomplishing what we thought it should accomplish. But we kept pumping dollars and programming dollars and people resources into that until we surfaced it and said, wait a minute. The goal was to help parents do a better job shaping their kids' spirituality. But is that actually happening? We're assuming if we get them in the room and they hear these songs and hear these stories, it's going to happen. If it's not happening, then our assumption is false. Number 4, which assumptions are true but are not being fully leveraged? What are some things that we assume and that this really is true, but we're not fully leveraging it? Now, here's one we surfaced. People don't stick to a production, they stick to a relationship. People don't stick to a production, they stick to a relationship. We spent about a half a staff meeting talking about that one assumption. We assume that people don't stick to a production, we know that. But look how much production we do. But we do assume that people stick to relationships. That's how people connect. They stick to relationships. Well, if that's true, we then begin to ask, then what are we doing on Sunday morning to help people stick? We know what to do on Sunday morning to help people gather, but what are we doing on Sunday morning to help people stick? What can we do at a relational level on Sunday morning or in some of our other gathering environments? Because we have incredible production. We spend all our time and all our money doing incredible productions, but if nobody's going to stick to a production, which we know they don't, once we took that obvious truth and surfaced it, we went, we need to begin rethinking some of the things that we're doing once we've gathered people. As a result, we came up with our whole next environment, which is the thing I told you about earlier, and we've come up with some different things. So my point is this. Your ministry and programming decisions are based on assumptions. You need to know what those are. One of the best questions you can ask and one of the greatest exercises you can go through as a staff is to surface, what are we assuming? You know, here's one that when I say it, you're gonna go, well, duh, Andy, everybody knows that. Here's an assumption that it still hasn't fully registered with me, and it should, because I'm the communicator on Sunday morning on most weekends. I still prepare sermons under the assumption that most people are married to their first spouse and their kids are all related to each other within that home. When I create sermons and when we think about curriculum and programming, when we think family, we think first marriage, all the kids are related. Now, you know what? You know that's not true. And I know that's not true, but that has been such a deeply held assumption. That view of family drives most of our family ministry decisions. And then this past weekend, we're just reminded in the biggest way, 3 weekends ago now, I guess, we had a middle school event where all our middle schoolers were scattered out in homes, and one of our associate guy's been with me from the beginning, Bill Willett, some of you know Bill. He hosted a group of 8th or 7th grade girls in his home. I think there were 14 girls. And he was down there when they were doing their small group exercises, and I don't know what the leader asked, but she asked them to raise their hand, and he said 12 out of the 14 were directly impacted by divorce in their family. 12 of 14 in that one small group. But when I'm thinking sermon and doing my study and we're thinking programming, we're thinking, well, they're all gonna come every week, which we know they don't. And they're, everybody's married, that's their first marriage, and all those kids are related, and we know they're not. But do you see how that unexamined assumption drives programming decisions? No wonder they're outdated so quickly. As he said, I adapted that quote, as culture changes, we have to continue to examine our assumptions. Otherwise, we end up with old couches. And these don't have 50-year runs anymore. We don't have 70 years to do it the same way. We don't have 20 years to do it the same way, because things are changing much too quickly. Here's what I wrote under the conclusion in my notes. And this is hard for leaders. This is one of those polarities to manage. This is one of those tensions that's not gonna go away. The challenge for me as a leader and for you as a leader is to send a clear message to our church publicly, but hold everything in an open hand privately. What I mean by that is this. I get up on Sunday morning, I'm going, this, but not that, better looking couch. This is the greatest way in the world to reach teenagers. This is how we reach teenagers, casting vision. This is how we do it. This is the best way. I want you to be involved. I want you to volunteer. But in the back of my mind, I'm going, but not for long. I'm sold out to this, but one day it's gonna change. I love this, we created it, we're gonna spend a bunch of money on it, but one day it's gonna go away. It's casting a compelling vision for one thing, and at the same time having open hands and saying, you know what, but God, when this is no longer effective, I do not wanna fall in love with a strategy, I wanna fall in love with the mission. I wanna be infatuated with some couches, but I wanna be in love with the mission. The second thing I wrote in my conclusion is this. This came right from Craig. To reach people no one else is reaching, we've got to do things nobody else is doing. And we must refuse to keep doing the things that don't make a difference. Because you're like me and I'm like you. I don't want a ministry environment full of old, ugly, ineffective couches that I'm in love with because I have sweet memories associated with them. Like you, I want to be on the cutting edge of what God is doing in our culture, which means we keep asking the same questions. But we've got to be willing to come up with different answers, knowing that very few things don't change. God is one, His word is another, and His love for people is a third one. Other than that, just about everything else in the world is up for discussion. And I want to challenge you to create conversations, constant conversations, systematic conversations around questions like these, because the clock is ticking on all